Welcome on Texas football. A little breaking news here for the Longhorns. Longhorn Sports Information Department released injury news for the spring. There's some news on Arch Manning, Jerry, as well as 5 other starters for the Longhorns who could miss time this spring. Let's start with Arch Manning, though, where the news is actually a little bit better, maybe, even though they say the Sports Information Department says Manning is out for surgery and had surgery, a minor surgery to repair a foot injury that he sustained. He is expected back for the spring. That's good news. You want to have your starting quarterback available for spring ball. He had issues last year where all of his receivers were missing for spring ball, but he will be back. Your thoughts on the situation right now with Arch Manning, and then we'll tell you the other players that are going to be out, it looks like, for some of spring.
Yeah, the official statement reads this way. He will be limited during offseason workouts, but is expected back during spring football. And that's different than the other guys that we're going to talk about, the way that release was written. But, yeah, look, I mean, the one thing that Arch he's in a good place is his body and where he is physically. In a great spot for a quarterback there. So I don't actually think with the amount of hits and the beating he took, I mean, some time off might not be the worst thing ever for his body. And just to get feeling great again, as long as he's back for part of spring practice, that's the big deal for me. Look, even if he's not padded up, he can still be out there throwing to guys for part of spring practice, right? So I don't think the Arch Manning surgery really places any worry on me. I think he'll be back. They said it. He's going to be back for part of spring. He's going to be throwing to the guys. There is not a spring game, so it's not like there's a TV production for spring practice he's going to miss. So I actually think this could be a blessing in disguise. His body gets a chance to really rest after last season.
Yeah, I think that to your point, as long as he's back by spring ball, the likelihood or the concern over him having a lingering injury issue is minimal.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest. But
I'll jokingly tell you this too, Bobby. He was out in Cabo swinging a golf club with no shoes on. So it's definitely a minor injury, okay?
The other players that Texas said were having off-season surgery. Trevor Gooseby we knew about with his shoulder. But the others include Xavier Filsaime, Emmett Mosley, Tyanthony Smith, and Ryan Wingo. Wingo's a wrist. Gooseby, Smith, and Filsaime are all shoulders. And then Emmett Mosley is an ankle that obviously got banged up in that Citrus Bowl game. Your thoughts? We knew about Gooseby. We knew about Filsaime from behind the scenes, but didn't report it. Your thoughts on the shoulder surgery guys, Tyanthony Smith as well?
Yeah, I mean, Tyanthony Smith is, and look, they didn't say these guys will be back for spring. They said they are expected back 100% healthy by the season. That's a lot different than the statement on Arch Manning, by the way. So Tyanthony Smith, the defensive guys with the change in coordinator Will Muschamp, those are the guys I look at and say, that's probably not as good. And it's not a terrible thing for this. They're going to be back for the season. This happens all the time. But when I'm looking at those 5, okay, well, there's no change at wide receiver, coach, or offensive scheme or coordinator. So with an Emmett Mosley, with a Ryan Wingo, both those guys, especially Wingo, played with that wrist for a lot of the season and showed some toughness to get through that. The defensive guys, even though Filsaime has that familiarity with Blake Gideon coming back, I still think there was some talk of repping him at nickel in the spring, right? And so those guys missing the spring, if they had missed the entire spring on the field with Will Muschamp, that can set them back a little bit in terms of where they'll be at August, right? Doesn't mean they're not going to be sitting in the meeting rooms and hearing everything Muschamp says, but there's always a little difference between hearing it and going and having the reps on the field. So those guys, it might set them back a little bit with Muschamp's scheme, but these are experienced football players too.
I find it interesting, Jerry, because as I look at it, the 3 shoulder guys, you mentioned Gooseby as well as Tyanthony Smith and Xavier Filsaime. All with Gooseby, we're aware, but Smith, it's a leadership position for him, in my opinion. And then Filsaime it's his coming of age time,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like that could be losing significant time is big. On the offensive side of the football, it's at receiver with both Emmett Mosley and Ryan Wingo. If they miss time in the spring, it's going to be the second spring in a row where they don't get to work with Arch Manning on
Yeah.
timing. The positive of that, though, is Khalil Lockett, Jermaine Bishop, Dalen McCutcheon
Yes.
do see more time with the Texas quarterback, and you get a better chance of seeing where they're at. Cohen Brown as well, the true freshman.
Yeah. I actually think, look, this is a bit of a blessing, will end up being a blessing in disguise, too. Because the one thing about Ryan Wingo and Arch and Emmett Mosley, they built that up in practice and during the season. And Mosley obviously missed a few games, but throughout the SEC play and in the bowl game until Mosley got hurt, he was going to have a huge game. So I think this one also can be very beneficial to Texas because, like you said, Jermaine Bishop, he's going to get a lot more reps now. Cam Coleman and Arch will for sure get on the same page. Like he's going to get probably the most reps in the spring while you also are not putting him in harm's way. Dalen McCutcheon, a young player that needs these guys, Khalil Lockett, they need their reps. Cohen Brown gives them a chance to really impress. So I actually think this could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise for Arch Manning with some of the other wide receivers because he needs to build rapport with those guys too because people get injured during the season. I mean, we saw last season, Ryan Wingo missed some time in games with injury. DeAndre Moore missed a game with a concussion. So those are very important reps for the younger players to spring. And really, Bobby, isn't that what spring football is about? I mean, it's about really seeing what you have after your starters, getting those guys enough reps to where you feel like they're good to go if there's an injury during the season. So I think there's some positives in this as well. And look, I mean, we mentioned the younger receivers. Let's mention Tyler Atkinson. Because if Anthony Smith is out the entire spring, and we're not saying he is, but the release did not say he was going to be back for some of the spring like it did for Arch. Well, Tyler Atkinson's reps just went through the roof. I mean,
Right.
Rasheem Biles, obviously Crier's an A-gap thumper player. Boswell, a depth piece brought in, but Tyler Atkinson suddenly gets a ton of reps this spring. That's going to be really good for him in his transition to major college football.
All right. Last point again. The people that are out. Arch Manning underwent foot surgery this week as a preventative measure to address a previous injury. He is expected back for spring. Texas also around 10 o'clock this morning announcing that several players, 5 starters actually, had offseason surgery. They are Xavier Filsaime, Trevor Gooseby, Emmett Mosley, Anthony Smith, and Ryan Wingo, all expected back by the football season. We'll see who is available for spring, if any of them. My guess, Jerry, is the 3 with the shoulders are not going to be back.
Yeah.
Ankle and wrist is a maybe. We'll see what happens. But spring ball only a month away, month and a half away from starting. Steve Sarkisian typically starts around the first or second week of March for spring ball. So not a ton of time for recuperation before then. Also, I want to mention a little bit more breaking news. Jamal Merriweather, big offensive lineman from Georgia, 6'7", 305, is on campus currently at the University of Texas for a visit. We will see if what this means for the Longhorns as they look to add depth on a depleted offensive line that lost several players to the portal. We will see if Texas makes a strong push there or if Merriweather has other plans as well. Jerry, any final comments on the situation?
Yeah, we'll see if there's anybody added to the spring injury report as it gets closer. One of the names that, we kind of wondered if when Texas put out a release, whenever that would be Justice Terry be on that because he missed a bowl game and he's had that a little bit of a pec shoulder issue. He'd been wearing a harness pretty much since his senior season. As of now, was not on that missed spring report. So that's good news on Justice Terry if that maintains.
Good stuff. All right, that's going to do it for this quick update. Again, Arch Manning surgery, foot surgery, but expected back for spring ball. For Gerry Hamilton and our producer, Matt Hutchison, I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em horns.